They really let someone like that serve food? The cruel words rang out across the diner as Claire Bennett bent down to retrieve a tray she'd just dropped. Her scarred hands trembled slightly, but her face, marked by burns from a life long past, remained composed. The men at the corner booth erupted in laughter, mocking her as she moved quietly, with grace hardened by years of service. No one said a word. Not the manager, not the customers. Silence reigned until a gray-haired man in a crisp military uniform rose from a table in the back. He moved with deliberate calm, stepping toward the mockers with quiet authority. "You just laughed at the woman who pulled me from a burning vehicle under enemy fire," he said, voice firm. "She saved my life, and the lives of 8 other men." In that moment, the mood in the diner changed. Shame replaced laughter. Patrons stood in silence. And Claire, who had endured stares, whispers, and isolation, finally lifted her chin, her scars no longer hidden, but honored. Sometimes it takes one voice to remind a room what sacrifice truly looks like. The breakfast crowd at Millie's Country Diner was its usual blend of regulars and weekenders, retired couples reading the paper, truckers passing through, and locals catching up over biscuits and gravy. But on that chilly Saturday morning, the warmth of the room was pierced by a remark no one would soon forget. "They really let someone like that serve food?" The comment came from a sharply dressed businessman seated at a booth near the window. His 2 companions chuckled, nodding in agreement as their server, Claire Bennett, quietly gathered a tray she'd dropped. Her face bore deep scars along the right cheek, creeping down beneath the collar of her uniform. It was the kind of damage most people couldn't help but stare at, some in curiosity, others with disdain. Claire had long grown used to both. What she hadn't grown used to was cruelty. "Must have been a botched plastic surgery," one of the men added loudly, as Claire picked up the broken glass with gloved hands. Another man laughed. "Or a war story gone wrong. Bet she tells people she's a hero or something." Claire said nothing. Her face didn't flinch, but inside, a familiar ache stirred. She was used to the stares, the whispers, but ridicule stung differently when it came from grown men. At 32, Claire had rebuilt her life piece by piece. A former Army combat medic, she'd served in Fallujah, where an ambush left her with 2nd- and 3rd-degree burns to nearly 40% of her body. The scars were permanent, and so were the memories. After 2 years of surgeries and rehab, she traded her fatigues for an apron and took the job at Millie's, where she worked the morning shift, 6 days a week. Most customers were polite, even kind. A few, like Mr. Leland, a Korean war vet who always sat by the jukebox, greeted her with a respectful nod. But some, like the men at table 7, saw only what they wanted to see. Something broken, something less than. The kitchen door swung open, and Claire stepped back inside. She took a breath and flexed her fingers, a habit left over from therapy. Her left hand bore the worst of the burns, and while the skin had healed, the ache sometimes came back with the cold. "You want me to take over that table?" asked Dave, a young waiter who'd been hired just last week. "I've got it," she said softly. "It's my section." Out in the dining room, the laughter from table 7 continued. They whispered more cruel jokes, loud enough to hear, but just quiet enough to avoid direct confrontation. Until someone stood up. From the corner booth rose an older man, silver hair, upright posture, and a chest full of service ribbons. The room went still. He walked straight to the mockers and stopped just short of their table. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried the authority of someone who'd commanded men in battle. "You just laughed at the woman who saved my entire platoon." The words dropped like thunder in a silent sky. "That's Sergeant Claire Bennett," he continued. "In Fallujah, she pulled me and 3 others out of a burning Humvee while mortars rained down. She was burned trying to save men who didn't make it. She was 25 years old. He turned to Claire, who had frozen in place near the coffee station. "Sergeant, it's an honor to see you again." Claire blinked back tears. "Colonel Davis?" she whispered. He nodded. "I owed you a thank you I never got to say." The businessman stammered. We didn't know." "You didn't need to," Colonel Davis said sharply. "You only needed to act like decent human beings." One by one, patrons rose to their feet. Mr. Leland removed his cap and held it over his heart. A woman near the window wiped away tears. No one looked at the businessmen anymore. All eyes were on Claire. Colonel Davis stepped closer and gently placed a business card in Claire's hand. "We're launching a veteran support program. You have a place there, if you want it." Claire didn't speak, but her smile said more than words could. The men at table 7 left quietly, their plates untouched. The tip they left was large, but it couldn't erase what had been said. Some wounds, like Claire's, are visible. Others run deeper. But that morning, a room full of strangers learned a lesson they wouldn't forget. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it serves you coffee and clears your plate, with hands that once held the lives of soldiers. Sometimes, courage wears an apron. It was a slow Tuesday morning at Harold's Roadside Cafe, a humble spot in Nebraska where truckers, retirees, and regulars shared stories over black coffee and bacon. Claire Dawson moved steadily from table to table, her worn notepad in one hand, the coffee pot in the other. Her gait had a slight limp, and the scars across her face and neck were impossible to ignore. But no one who knew her judged. They knew her story, or at least enough of it. Claire, now 32, had once served as a combat medic with the U.S. Army in Fallujah. An ambush in 2005 left her with second-degree burns over much of her upper body. She'd saved 5 men that day, including a young lieutenant, and she'd paid for it with her skin, her lungs, and a career cut short. She never talked about it. Her medals stayed in a drawer, her stories untold. Instead, she poured coffee and served pancakes, content to live quietly, until that morning. At 9:10 a.m., 3 sharply dressed men entered the cafe. City boys, judging by their tone and designer shoes. Claire greeted them as she did everyone. "Morning, gentlemen. Sit wherever you'd like." But when she approached with menus, one of the men recoiled. "Good God," he muttered, not quietly enough. "They really let someone like that handle food?" Claire paused, smile still in place. "Today's special is the country skillet with, 'I just lost my appetite,'" another man said with a sneer. Then came the laughter. They mocked her scars, her limp, even her hands, which shook slightly as she poured water. No one in the cafe spoke up. Not Dave, the new hire behind the counter. Not the manager, who glanced up and looked quickly away. Even the retired couple in booth 3, the ones Claire always brought extra toast for, buried themselves in their paper. Claire, for her part, said nothing. She cleaned the spilled water with grace and retreated to the kitchen. But her hands trembled as she ran them under cold water. The sting of the scars was nothing compared to the old, familiar ache of humiliation. That's when a quiet shift occurred. From the far corner of the diner, an older man in a pressed uniform, silver hair, clean boots, and a chest full of ribbons, rose to his feet. Colonel Thomas Beckett, retired. He had been sitting silently, watching everything with the stillness of a man trained in patience. He crossed the room, calm and unhurried, and stopped at the businessmen's booth. "Gentlemen," he said, voice firm but steady, "you just mocked the woman who saved my life." The diner froze. "She pulled me from a burning vehicle in Fallujah. My legs were broken. Mortars were landing around us. She went back 3 times. Third time her uniform caught fire. He turned toward Claire, who had emerged from the kitchen, eyes wide. Sergeant Dawson, he said, offering a formal salute. It's good to see you again. Claire's armor cracked. Her eyes welled with tears. Colonel Beckett? He nodded once. She saved 6 of us, he told the room. And she didn't do it for medals. She did it because she believed every life matters, even those who would laugh at her now. One of the businessmen stammered, We didn't know. You didn't need to know, the colonel said firmly. All you needed was decency. One by one, the cafe patrons stood. Mr. Garrison, a World War II vet, removed his cap and placed it over his heart. A young mother whispered to her son, That's what a real hero looks like. Even Dave stepped forward and placed a free slice of pie on Claire's tray. The businessmen left in silence, their arrogance gone. That afternoon, the diner's owner framed a photograph of Claire in uniform, awarded the Silver Star. It hangs above the coffee station now, with the inscription, Respect isn't owed by appearance, it's earned by sacrifice. They mocked her scars, until someone reminded them what they cost. At Miller's Diner off Highway 89, the coffee's always hot, the biscuits always flaky, and the regulars, mostly retirees and blue-collar workers, keep the place humming with quiet routine. On most mornings you'd find Sarah Whitman, 33, gliding between booths with her notepad in one hand and a smile in the other. Her uniform was spotless, her steps measured. But it was her face, partially scarred on one side, that some newcomers couldn't help but stare at. Those who knew her never asked. They simply tipped well and treated her kindly. But not everyone who walked through the door came with respect. It was just after 9 a.m. when 3 businessmen from out of town entered the diner. Their suits were sharp, voices loud, and laughter careless. Sarah approached as she always did. Good morning, fellas. Welcome to Miller's. But the man closest to her stopped cold. Holy hell, he muttered. You guys seriously let that serve food here? Sarah's smile didn't falter. Today's special is chicken fried steak with eggs. Coffee to start? Another one chimed in, loud enough for nearby tables. I just lost my appetite. The third man snickered. Then came the sound of clattering dishes. Sarah's tray, nudged by an elbow, hit the floor, and the laughter got louder. She bent down slowly, methodically collecting the broken glass. Her hands, wrapped in the faint sheen of old burn scars, worked with the practiced rhythm of someone used to cleaning up what others dropped, physically or otherwise. In the kitchen, she took a breath, washed her hands, returned to the floor, never raised her voice, never demanded anything. But someone else noticed. Seated quietly in the back was retired Colonel Henry Brooks, a tall, silver-haired man in his late 60s. His army uniform was pressed sharp, and the ribbons across his chest spoke of wars fought, wounds earned, and brothers lost. He'd been watching the scene unfold in silence. Until now. With steady steps, Colonel Brooks rose from his table and approached the businessmen. Gentlemen, he said, his voice clear, firm, you just mocked the woman who saved my life. The room fell still. Brooks continued, turning toward the diners. Her name is Sergeant Sarah Whitman. She was a combat medic with the 1st Infantry Division. In Fallujah, she ran into a burning transport vehicle under direct fire, not once, but 3 times. She pulled out 6 men, including me. Her uniform melted to her skin. She nearly died doing it. The businessman blinked. One stuttered, "We didn't know." "You didn't need to know," Brooks replied. "You only needed to be decent." Sarah stood frozen in place, her hands clenched around a coffee pot. The armor she wore each day, silence, humility, wavered. A tear broke free and traced the edge of her scar. Brooks approached her and stood at attention. "Sergeant Whitman, it's an honor to finally thank you in person." Those words echoed through the diner. Slowly, one by one, patrons stood. An older couple placed their hands over their hearts. A young mother told her son, "That's what a real hero looks like." Dave, the new busboy, brought Sarah a clean towel and simply nodded, eyes filled with awe. The businessmen? They paid and left in silence, heads low. Later that week, Miller's Diner framed a new photo above the register. Sarah in uniform, arm around Colonel Brooks, both smiling. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Not all heroes wear capes. Some carry coffee." Sometimes the loudest voice in the room isn't strength, it's ignorance. Real courage moves quietly. It doesn't seek attention. It endures the laughter, the whispers, the shame, just to serve others with grace. If you believe scars are not something to be mocked but honored, leave a comment below. And if you want more stories that restore your faith in humanity, hit that subscribe button. You just might find that the hero you've been searching for is the one bringing your breakfast. They let someone like that serve food? The cruel words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Sarah Whitman didn't flinch. She just lowered her eyes, gathered the shattered glasses she'd dropped, and quietly carried on. Her face, half covered in burn scars, had long been a magnet for stares and sneers. But no one knew the truth, until that morning. Seated in the back, a retired Army colonel rose. The diner went silent as his voice rang clear. "You just mocked the woman who saved my life." His story silenced every sneer. Sergeant Whitman had dragged 6 wounded men, including him, out of a burning Humvee in Fallujah. Her scars weren't flaws. They were evidence of bravery the rest of us can barely comprehend. That day, the diner changed. People stood. Some cried, others saluted. No one looked at Sarah the same again. Not because her scars faded, but because their hearts had finally opened to the story they told. Sometimes, the people we judge too quickly are the very ones who once ran toward danger, so others could live. Scars are not shameful. They are the handwriting of sacrifice on the skin of courage. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below with, "I see you." And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of what real honor looks like. Not on a stage, but in the quiet strength of those who've already served.